podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the Podcast as we build up to the Easter weekend, which for some clubs may be the difference between success and failure this season. But for ourselves, it's about preparing for the lottery of the playoffs as we are all but confirmed to finish fourth. And to get us underway in what we hope will end up being a Good Friday indeed is a trip to Bristol City, who sit 12 points behind us in fifth. And to help us build up to the fixture, we have someone who has a foot in both camps. He made 320 appearances for Sunderland and played in an FA Cup final at Wembley as well as a playoff final as well. And then spent 4 years as Bristol City as a player and had a spell as a coach as well. Now working for BBC Radio Bristol, providing his insight on the Robins. There's surely nobody better to talk to and building up to the game than today's guest, Gary Owers. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you very much. Love the build-up.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Gary Owers. I mean, there has to be a build-up, doesn't it? I mean, I probably told you before, but my first game was at Roker Park was you scoring that header against Man United. That was my first memory.
Yeah, that was a happy memory. That will live long in the memory. Actually, I mean, we played Tottenham actually in midweek.
Yeah.
I think we drew. I should have scored against Tottenham and I missed a 1v1, so it was nice to score that one. It was even nicer, I must admit, to watch Gary Bennett score that memorable goal. Centre half with 3 minutes to go in the game, popping up on the left wing somehow. Flicking over, I think it was either Steve Bruce or Gary Palliser's head and Bennett in the bottom corner, and that was a delight, and that's something that I'll never forget.
I imagine he still got told off by Dennis Smith after the game for being where he was.
I just don't know how. I've watched the video and I just don't know how we got there, but Harry did go wandering now and again.
Well, that's it. Well, it's been a while since we caught up. How are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Keeping busy day to day, sort of working for the National League, involved with youth development programme. So still get up to the North East, looking after clubs like South Shields and Gateshead and Blythe Spartans, York City. And then obviously, probably by chance, really, fell into covering Bristol City for Radio Bristol probably about 6 or 7 seasons ago. I actually got asked, I was out to work and I got asked to if I'd be interested in doing the Bristol City Man U game, which was a League Cup game, and I sort of couldn't turn it down, and I've probably been there ever since.
Well, yeah, I mean, I read what you put about Bristol City on the BBC website, and I think at one point you were covering Plymouth as well a few years ago as well.
I've done Plymouth. I've been asked to cover Yeovil Town as well. So I don't quite understand why. Although the Plymouth connection was that I had a spell there as assistant manager. So maybe they just couldn't get anyone to go and watch Plymouth, so they sent me.
Well, I mean, how do you see yourself now? Because I think you've covered every job at a football club, from manager down to scout, and you do the media side, and as you said, you're still doing the development with the National League. So, do you see yourself as now, a kind of hybrid? You're still involved in the game, but you do media, or do you see yourself more as a pundit or as a coach? How do you see yourself?
Probably someone who's crap at everything. That's why I've had so many jobs. But no, I've had good experiences, and I've enjoyed those experiences, and I've been fortunate enough to get them. And I've gone into clubs in one role. For example, when I went into Bristol City, I went in as a scout to work in recruiting young players from the lower leagues, and I managed to recruit a young player from Plymouth called Yannick Balassi for around £10,000. I think sold to me a year later for £400,000. Then they got £5 million as a sell-on money, went to Everton from Palace for £29 million. But I was working with Keith Millen, the manager, and Steve Wigley, and they asked us to do a session one day, and I had some coaching experience. I took a session and they sort of pulled us straight off the scouting and got us out on the training ground. So things haven't always sort of gone the way I expected them to. And you know what? I really, really enjoyed my recruitment roles And if there was one thing, if you said where would you see yourself as having something to offer, still, I would say in any recruitment role, I've done sort of European scouting, I've done coach analysis for clubs, and obviously player recruitment. So that is something that I do have a passion for.
Yeah. So that out of all the jobs, because like I said, I'm not sure there's a job you haven't done from manager downwards down to scouting, but is that the one? If somebody could say pick a job at our club, you'd go, yeah, I'll
yeah, I'd help anybody out. Still get asked to sort of assess players or watch players, and that'd be something that I think I've got an eye for a player, and that comes with alongside my playing experience. Hopefully, where I've watched lots of young players, being a young player myself, of course. That managed to break through in the team as a young player and sort of half understand what it might take to break through. Now, it's very hard now for young players. You know, the Premier League has pushed all the English players down the leagues clearly, and the standard of football, I believe, has gone up across all the divisions, and there's still lots and lots of young talented players who get kicked out of Premier League and Championship clubs far too early, and they're there if you can go and find them.
Yeah. And just out of interest, just kind of a bit curious, I mean, because you've been coaching and scouting for a lot of years now, was there any ever kind of hint that, was there any kind of link that you might get up to Sunderland at any point?
There was, and I won't tell the whole story because it didn't pan out how it should have panned, but I was at Bristol City and there was a job advertised as a development coach, and I applied for it. The recruitment agency, it was an agency, it wasn't a football club, and they rang me up and they said, you are on the shortlist, you will get a phone call from someone at the club who will invite you up to go and deliver a session. And I got a phone call, and it wasn't the phone call that I should have got, but that's a long time ago. I was disappointed at the time, but I'm not bitter about it. It would have been great. But it just didn't happen.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think fans always like when ex-players get involved. Michael Proctor obviously is a coach now. We've had Craig Russell behind the scenes at times and things like that. So it's always nice to have an ex-player.
Yeah, they're good lads as well. I mean, I was lucky enough as well. I do a few sort of midwinter training camps, and maybe a couple of seasons ago now. Actually, I was out in Dubai looking after Sunderland with Tony Mowbray and Mark Venus, and I really enjoyed spending time with them. It was fantastic to be around and feel part of the club again.
Yeah. Right. Well, we'll get into kind of the modern day and the game ahead, and we'll get into Bristol City in a bit. But I want to start with Sunderland and see, what you make of how things are up here from a distance. And after last season, obviously we saw Tony Mowbray leave. You've already mentioned him, and then the club made a bit of a hash of trying Michael Beale, and then they were almost forced to have Mike Dodds play out the last part of the season. Hints had kind of given up really on the rest of the season, finished in the bottom half. But then obviously in the summer, complete unknown Frenchman, Regis Lebris, kind of, his name seemed to come out of nowhere. What did you make of that appointment?
Yeah, probably like everybody else. Who's he and where's he come from? And then, you look at the start of the season and you're seeing Sunderland sort of setting the pace, and you think, wow, what's happening here? And he has to take a lot of credit. Even for the position that Sunderland are in now, and I know the fans will be disappointed because the expectation is that if you top the league for a while, you're going to stay there. If from a Sunderland supporter's point of view, but you look at the three teams above them that have come clearly from the Premier League, and you think, have they got any sort of right in the modern game to finish above them? And to finish fourth will be an achievement in itself, even though it's the season's sort of coming towards the end, and the form's just turned a little bit patchy, if you like. But what do you do? Stick or twist? You know that you're not going to catch the teams above you, and the teams below you aren't going to catch you. And actually, the advantage of finishing third or fourth is the same. in regard to you get that second leg at home. And, I think the fancy, from a Sunderland point of view, they'd fancy playing anyone. I don't think they'd go into any of those games with any fear.
Yeah. I mean, is that something we should hold on to? Yeah, something you touched on there, the fact that even if this season doesn't turn out as we want it to, that we should remember that it has been a successful season.
Yes and no. It's the same conversation down here in Bristol with Bristol City, where they're still not guaranteed that they're going to get in the playoffs. I think they should make it because they've got that little 4-point cushion, and people are already saying it'll have been a good season. But if they didn't get in the playoffs from this position, I think it would be real disappointment. And if Sunderland didn't get promoted from the position that they're in, and you go into next season with, all that enthusiasm and expectation for sure, but next season, the Championship is going to be tougher, I believe. The teams that potentially Birmingham are going to get promoted, they will invest. They're going to move to a new stadium. If Wrexham get promoted, Wrexham are heading for the Premier League. So there's two teams that will make it stronger. The three teams that come down from the Premier League, we know will be competitive anyway. And you go back to the start line with no points, and you've got to do it all again. So this is, I always say, this is a golden opportunity to get back in the Premier League, and they've got to try and take it.
Yeah. It's no wonder you've got a lot of clubs in the Championship who've been there 8, 9, 10 seasons, is it?
No, it's funny, teams, you look all the way down, and Watford come out the Premier League and had numerous amount of managers. Middlesbrough, I've seen Middlesbrough at times this season, been really impressed with them, and then they go and get a result against someone from nowhere where you think, how have they been beaten off that team? And it is relentless, week in, week out. This is the time of the year where you don't get easy games because most clubs, even at the bottom of the table, it's pretty brutal. And everyone's scrapping for points. So you've got to get through the season, and if you finish in that top 6, then you get a pat on the back. But you've got to keep your eye on the prize, and the prize for everyone is promotion.
Yeah, that's it. And you talked at the beginning of having that passion for recruitment, and just on Christian Speakman, because he's the man running the football side of Sunderland, and he's been in place since December 2020, so just over 4 years now. He brought his own scouting and recruitment team in, and if you look back at the side he inherited, that wasn't exactly blown League One away. I mean, how do you look at the job he's done over that time at Sunderland?
I think there was a time when he was questioned. And I'm going to speak honestly here. I think, he surrounded himself with one or two people that clearly he had association with. Nothing wrong with that. You move into a new club and you need a little bit of insurance, and you need people fighting your corner, but you cannot knock him. You cannot knock him. If you look at where Sunderland have come from, how many seasons they languished in League One, that was pretty depressing. And then obviously making the playoffs, and then not making the playoffs, and now back in amongst it. You have to give him credit. He's been brave in his appointment with the manager, and that's worked wonders. And clearly they've got a team that is better than competitive, and the fourth best team as it stands. If that's the benchmarking for me all the time, is you can say what you want about the team, but it's where you finish. It's where you finish, and we've got a good team.
Yeah. Like you said, we're going to finish 4th in the table, as we said. And actually, I was thinking about your time under Dennis Smith. When we went up, we finished 11th in that first season, then finished 6th the season after, and obviously qualified for the playoffs. And I was looking back to that season on this day in 1990, and we were 6th with 4 games left, and we were 4 points clear of West Ham in 7th. And then we didn't confirm the kind of playoff place until the last day of the season. So you were going for something right until that last minute of a ball was kicked on that last day of the season. But looking at Sunderland's current position, do you think there's a worry that, that there's nothing riding on this final part of the season in terms of keeping an intensity up that you take into the playoffs?
That is, you're spot on, and that's what would worry me is Regis has sat there and he's thinking, do I risk my best players? You've got to go in with some momentum. You've got to go in with a winning mentality. You can't just let the season fizzle out and then expect to flick a switch and you turn up and play in two very important high intensity games. So that's for him to manage, and we'll see. We will see. With the 4 games left, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the game on Friday. But I mean, going back to when if my memory, you've just chucked that at me, so I haven't done any preparation on that. But I think we went Easter weekend. I think, was that when we played Wolves and Port Vale, and I think Paul Hardiman might have scored. I remember those games, 2 away games late in the season.
Hull at home, wasn't it? We lost 1-0, and then
we went and we played. It might have been Easter, might have been later or earlier, and we played Wolves, I think, in Port Vale. We won them both, but we stayed at Keele University, and we had the best weekend. We had the best weekend ever. We beat Wolves, I think.
Yeah. And
Dennis, the team spirit was unbelievable. We were out on the Sunday and we were having a barbecue. I think we're playing on the Monday, and he's desperately trying to get us to get back to the dormitories, but we weren't having everyone. We were dancing around the university somewhere, but we turned up at Port Vale, I think, and my memory might have totally gone, but it just took me mind for a reason. And I think I scored, and we knew, and it sounds stupid, and I can say it now, we knew we were going to get in the playoffs. We were absolutely flying at the end of the season. And we, obviously, I think Newcastle were miles ahead of us, probably more than 12 points as it is now. And they fell out of the promotion positions. And we had our eye on this game from a long way out. And lo and behold, that's how it turned out. So I suppose, we got promoted because we beat Newcastle over 2 legs. And probably not because we lost against Swindon. That was all going on in the background. Swindon were miles better than us on the day. No arguments with that. They were just, we couldn't get near them. It was 1-0. It could have been 4 or 5 easily, but you just get that feeling within the camp, the bond and the team spirit and the momentum. Like you say, anybody, I'd think we finished with a real strong run at the end of that season.
Yeah. I just had a quick look. Yeah, it was the penultimate game against Port Vale before the last day of the season, and you scored the first, and then they equalised, and then Paul Hardiman scored the winner, and Tony Norman saved the penalty just before half time.
Yeah, I remember Eric. He played us through, and I was 1v1 with the keeper, which didn't happen very often. And I went to kick it, and I kicked the floor first from 6 yards, I think 6 or 7 yards, and I kicked the floor. And because I kicked the floor, the goalkeeper dived. He dived out the way of the ball. I think I ran off as if I meant it as well. I didn't.
I bet you in the interviews after the game, I bet if we look back, it was a classy dummy or something like that.
Oh yeah, and don't watch the eyes.
Well, I mean, again, kind of looking back, it wasn't on our Shiny New podcast, but I spoke to you a couple of years ago previewing the same fixture, and I asked you then. When Sunderland were pushing for the playoff place, then that was kind of the first season we'd come up, I think. And I asked then if it was maybe too soon for some of those young players to be promoted to the Premier League. But do you think now, a couple of years later, looking at the players and looking at they've got a couple more years, that they've been playing, they've got the games under their belt. I mean, do you think now is the right time for those players in terms of progressing and also trying to hang on to them next season as well?
It's not. I don't think it's about. It's not necessarily about the players. It's about the club. It's about the supporters getting back into the Premier League. And let's be honest. If someone get promoted, the whole outlook of the squad, the whole shape of the squad, could change because clearly you have to invest. But for sure, they've got some really talented young players, and it's probably. One of the bonuses being in this position is that Regis can blood some young players or get some young players in and around the squad. And I did have a quick look at the team sheet from last weekend against Swansea, and all those players, even sitting on the bench, are getting great exposure, great experience, and that can only be a good thing. But I think I don't go in for that anymore about being the right time, being the right moment. You get in the Premier League when you can, by hook or by crook, and then you fight for your life to stay there.
Yeah. And I just talking about that team sheet, a lot of young players, as you said, and last couple of games, the manager's done a lot of rotation, and it's almost like this, and there's a lot of talk of this balance at the minute between getting players sharp, getting players fit for the playoffs because of the strange situation we're in, versus getting that momentum that you said was so important. But it seems then it's a bit confused. It's how do you get momentum if you throw young players in? I mean, there was a young lad who it was brilliant to see him make his debut, but at the same time, if we were playing for something, that wouldn't necessarily have happened. So how do you make of how the manager handles this running?
Well, it's exactly that. I mean, we've spoken about it. What's he thinking? He has to have a plan. You know, at some point he'll have to show his hand. I think, and I might get into it at the minute. For example, Bristol City are trying to make sure that they cement a place in the top 6.
Yeah.
The manager's playing his best team that's available to him. And I think that's something that Regis is going to have to do at some point. He's going to have to show his hand. He's going to have to play the team potentially that could play or start in the playoffs. And let's remember, it's 2 legs. It's a bit of a game of chess, home and away. So there's lots of decisions to make there. But he's got to have an idea about what his strongest 11 will be, and he's got to make sure that they're all up to speed.
Yeah.
And you cannot go in now. I'm looking at the games: Bristol City, Blackburn, Oxford, QPR, and on paper they'll belong to them, thinking they've got a chance in all of those games. And for Sunderland, you know, finishing with a couple of wins at least will be the best thing that can happen to them.
Yeah. And you talking about, again, young players. I saw you did an interview on the Sunderland club website back in December, and you were talking up some of the younger players at the club. I mean, who impresses you in this current Sunderland side?
I look at Chris Rigg, and I wouldn't say anything talking blind, because I haven't seen a lot of the other young players, but he looks a talent. I think he come off injured actually in the game at the Stadium of Light against Bristol City, but he's played wide. It looks like he's playing a more central role, but to have that potential at his young age and the potential to be not only creative but a goal scorer midfielder is a massive, massive plus.
One of the players you mentioned in that piece back in December was Tommy Watson. And obviously the news has come out recently that he's off to Brighton in the summer. I mean, the first thing about that, I mean, obviously, you know, coming from yourself, who was a local player, came through the ranks, and you came through with the likes of Gordon Armstrong. And between the two of you, you made well over 700 appearances for the club over probably 10 years. I mean, looking at Tommy Watson and that transfer, I mean, do you think it's just different in the modern day that players don't maybe have that connection and stay put, or whether it's just, or is this just something we have to accept, that the position the club's in at the minute, that we are that selling club from time to time?
Well, let's be totally blunt. It's money. It's money coming in to the club, and it's agents influencing players with massive contracts. And you know, on one hand, do you want to deny someone the opportunity that's ambitious and can secure his financial future for the rest of his life, maybe in 1 or 2 seasons? And it is different. I mean, there's lots of, we had a good core. You know, Mickey Gray come through behind us and played lots of games. Craig Russell, Martin Smith. There was always local players in the squad, and that's how it was. But the game is different, and you know, these big Premier League clubs, believe me, because I've seen it firsthand. If anything moves with any sort of talent, they are all over it, and not just one club. Brighton might have signed them, but I guarantee you that every club in the Premier League would have been aware of them. And it's a competitive market. Brighton move early, signing young players, Bournemouth move early, sign young players, but they make good decisions.
Yeah. Well, that's a scary thought for the summer ahead. Thanks for that, Gary, because I think a few of them is going to be on teams' radars. But let's move on to Bristol City. 10th season in the Championship after coming back from League One. The highest they finished in that time is 8th. As we said, they're currently 5th with a 4-point gap to 7th. And I don't remember anyone tipping them for a season like this going back to the summer. So what were the expectations for Bristol City for this season if you go back to the summer?
Well, every other fan in the Championship club, it's a standing joke that they finished 12th. So I think at the start of the season, to be honest, Bristol City fans were looking for some improvement. And improvement you might measure as finishing in the top 10. And it's been a really strange season, and I won't dwell on the fact, but you know, halfway through the season, Liam Manning obviously lost his young son, and it was before the Middlesbrough game away from home, which they went on to win. And I just think that seemed to be a pivotal moment. It just seemed to galvanise the players and the supporters and everybody. There was an outpouring of emotion, and everybody got behind Liam. And again, I can only be honest. I don't think when he was appointed, he wasn't everybody's first choice or favourite. Nigel Pearson was quite popular with the supporters, and it's taken Liam quite a while to win over the fans. But they're well and truly behind him now, and he's done an absolutely fantastic job. I think he probably tweaked the formation and gone to play with a back three, which he did at the end of last season, and that corresponded with the best run that had all season. So coming back to the start of this season, when he went away from that, was a little bit of a surprise, but he's gone back to it and he's had success.
Yeah, I read about obviously, you know, what happened with Liam Manning and his wife, obviously losing their baby son Theo, like you said. And I read an interview in The Guardian, which he did last month, where he basically, you know, was able to talk about it, and, you know, he talked about how the club helped him so much. But I mean, to be, you know, in and around that with a club, because, you know, it seemed like, you know, with what the fans did and what the players did, as you've described, I mean, it mustn't have been an emotional time for everybody at the club, because, you know, each game was, you know, almost thinking of Liam Manning, and football took a back seat. But it almost, like you said, it because of that emotion, it's kind of pushed everyone on at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a tribute at the away game and at the home game as well. And you say that football takes a back seat. Actually, it probably doesn't, because life went on, and don't we live in a selfish world sometime when we're worrying about whether we got beat 1-0 or we drew 1-1, and people are dealing with things like that. But he got through it, and you know, he's out the other end, and hopefully you know, finding some peace with it all. And yeah, he's got on with his job, and he's doing an excellent job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was looking back to obviously in the summer, but it looked like he was backed by the board. They signed some. I mean, I think they lost Tommy Conway to Middlesbrough, I think, but you know, they signed a few players and seemingly spend a little bit of money.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they invested. The big thing was a central striker, something different, which they haven't had. That physical, athletic, dynamic centre forward. So they signed Fali Riulu from Austria and Sinclair Armstrong from QPR for 6-figure fees. Fali got off to a flyer. He scored in his first 2 games, and then just you know, really struggled, lost confidence, couldn't get in the team, didn't look enthusiastic at all, and eventually, by the time the window opened again, he was loaned back to a club in Austria, Sturm Graz, I think, and that was a big disappointment, and where that will leave him in the long term, we don't know. Clearly, he's still got a contract at Bristol City for another 2 or 3 years at least. And Sinclair Armstrong is everything that you wanted in terms of pace and power and being dynamic. But you look at his goal scoring record when he come from QPR, which was probably 3 in 63. And I don't know how many he's got, probably not more than 3 or 4 this season off the top of my head, but does everything, unsettles defenders, gets into great scoring positions, but he's just not a natural finisher. So looks like it's a work in progress, but on the face of the fact that they did invest in front players, I think they've done ever so well to be where they are. They've shared the goals round. Mehmeti was in excellent form earlier in the season. He's just sort of fallen out the side at the minute. And Narky Wells, who's 36 or 37, he's had an exceptional season. Of course, got a great goal scoring record, has that experience, and he's just kept ticking over and scoring the goals here and there. I think he's in double figures now. So they've got through. They've got through in spite of what, if you asked any Bristol City supporter what they thought of the money that was spent in the summer, they probably think it wasn't really spent very well.
Well, yeah, you mentioned Mehmeti, current top scorer with 12. He's got the same as Wilson Isidore at Sunderland. Narky Wells, like you said, 10 goals. But like you said, they've got other players who they've brought in. So, I mean, should it be those that we're worried about, that the two top scorers, or, do goals come from elsewhere, in terms of players who actually start every week?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, we went to QPR last week and 2 players got injured in the warm-up on the pitch, on the side of where they warm up. Mark Sykes, who's been excellent, has been playing right wing back, possibly going to miss the game and maybe the rest of the season is a rumour. And also the goalkeeper, Max O'Leary, who sort of stumbled and twisted his ankle. So that was a bit of bad luck. So potentially a couple of changes for the game on Friday. Mehmeti is clearly top scorer, is a threat on his day, but just lost his fizz a little bit. But players to watch out. Jason Knight in the middle of the pitch, the captain, he's had a great season, drives the team forward. George Earthy, player who they've got on loan from West Ham, really come into top form. I'd been patient and had to wait for his opportunity because he always wasn't picked in the first part of the season. He's a good player. Max Bird, creative in midfield. So they have got some good players, and that's why they've done well. The conversation down here is, you're talking about the talented players in Sunderland squad that might go for millions of pounds. It's how many players in Bristol City's team would you sell for 10 or 15 million pounds? Well, probably not any, actually, but they've all got value when they come together and they form this really tight bond and are playing well.
Yeah. Well, specifically, I was looking at Bristol City's home form, and on paper, it looks like a tough one for Sunderland. They've got the 5th best home record in the league, almost identical, actually, to Sunderland's. Even the goal difference is the same. They've lost 1 in the last 13, which was against Swansea at the beginning of February. Also won 8 out of their last 11 at Ashton Gate, and 5 games in those 8 have ended up specifically 2-1 to Bristol City. So, I mean, what makes them so impressive at Ashton Gate?
I don't know. It's not a mystery because they're playing well, but in the seasons before that, they struggled at home. That was often the reason why they didn't finish any higher than midfield. They tended to play better away from home. The away record was always good, but this season they've got it right. They've thrown a couple of games away as well. They're winning against Sheffield United with 5 minutes to go, 1-0, and they lost 2-1. But then they've won some games. The last game at home against West Brom, the win with the last kick of the game. So there's been a shift in the attitude on the terraces as well. I think the atmosphere down there has totally changed. 2 wins at home against Watford and West Brom, and I think that was the first time I felt that the supporters felt that they're in with a real chance this season. So, I mean, it's already a sellout on Friday, and there will be a really good atmosphere. I know Sunderland have sold out as well, and they're talking about bringing 3,500 supporters down. So I think it's going to be a good day. And just going back to the form lines, the only thing I would say, and you're talking about momentum, you look at the top 6, look at the top 8, and probably Bristol City are the team in form, and maybe the team that other teams might not want to play against in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm still worried about Millwall's form. I'm still worried about Millwall's form winning the last 3. Keep an eye on them. It's usually that team who sneaks in, isn't it?
Yeah. You can't count them out. Fair play to Alex Neil. I'm just looking there, 3 wins in a row.
Yeah,
4 wins out of 6, and they're only 3 points behind, so that they're chasing. And sometimes that's a good position to be in. But I think any of them teams, West Brom, Middlesbrough, and Millwall would swap places with Coventry and Bristol City.
Yeah.
Given the chance.
Well, I mean, looking at, obviously I was looking at their home form, but it looks on paper like it's been their away form that's stopped them from pulling away from that pack. I mean, I think they've only won 1 in the last 5. I mean, do they look like a completely different side on the road?
Not really. They tend to perform well in the games that you least expect. So, I mean, the recent game that springs to mind is Sheffield United away, where they were by far the better team, and they ended up drawing. But after 2 home wins and a game against QPR on Saturday, where you think we've got a real chance here, QPR were probably a little bit brighter and sharper on the day, and they had to dig in to get a point. So the games that they've got away from home left to play, Luton, who'll be fighting for their lives. We know that on Easter Monday, and then massive game against Leeds United. So the run-in is relatively tough for Bristol City. So there's still work to do. But I mean, I can't. It would be really disappointing if they didn't make it from this position.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just on that, if it does go down to the wire for Bristol City, and then let's assume they make the playoffs, but let's assume, it's on the last day of the season after a bit of drama. I mean, how tough mentally is that if they go through the ringer and then they've got to then get their heads right for another 3 games? I mean, is that an easy thing to do?
No, I think it helps. I think if you're getting down to the last game of the season and you've got to win it, it's sudden death football from then on. So to have that game, sudden death, last game of the season, is almost a dress rehearsal for the playoff games. So that could help you to come through and deal with that situation. Might be a help.
Yeah. And you'd mentioned wing backs before, and it's Sunderland, something Sunderland's actually struggled with this season when we've come up against side with wing backs and they pack the midfield. Is that kind of how Liam Manning tends to line up each time, or sometimes does he do different things depending on the opposition?
No, he's pretty rigid in his formation and his changes, and his 3-4-2-1. So back 3, 2 wing backs pushed on, 2 holding midfield players, 2 number 10s and a central striker, a little bit of rotation in wide areas where the inside forwards or number 10s, if you like, will drift into wide positions. But Ross McCrory has come back in the team. He's right-footed. We've been playing on the left side, and Cam Pring is. They've mixed and matched a little bit because of injuries, but if they'll miss Mark Sykes. If Mark Sykes isn't available, he'll be a big miss because he's been a real threat. Gets forward, is creative, can score a goal, and they'll miss that from him. And that would be a position where Liam would have to make a decision. He's got Hirakawa who played there, but he's better going forward than defending. And of course, Ross McCrory could come off the left side and play on the right side, and Cam Pring could play on the left wing back berth. So he's got options, but I've no doubt in my mind that will be the formation.
Yeah, I mean, just as well, based on the fact it's Bristol City, and I don't want to kind of slightly sound disrespectful, but do you think the fact that maybe they're overachieving, going into the playoffs, that it might give them a bit of freedom when they do get there, based, when you compare them to the likes of Sheffield United or Sunderland, where actually you think there might be a bit more pressure on those clubs to get promoted?
I don't know. Anyone that gets into the playoffs is achieving. Pressure, I'm not. I think you get there and you just have to take what's in front of you. You know that the big games, I think, thinking back, the thing I found really tough dealing with was playing in the build up the first game, especially. So, I mean, we were training in Sunderland, Hornley Spring somewhere. We were getting 200 or 300 people turn up to watch training. All of a sudden, you understand. It was a massive game. It was a massive game at the time. And we were heading into that. And then once you play the first game and you're in that game and you are in and you cannot escape it. Now, you play on the Saturday or the Sunday, I know the midweek this time, and you've got to live every second that you're awake and asleep. You've got to live with the fact that this game isn't over with. And that I found that tough. And when we beat Newcastle, it was such a release of everything. I mean, the emotion of winning the game clearly. But that release of the pressure, I suppose. So that's what we'll have to deal with. And it is tough, but it's, by the same token, it's really, really exciting because you know what, you know where it could possibly lead you to.
Well, that's it. And with the two clubs, 4th and 5th, and it was interesting there you talked about that, waiting for the Newcastle game on that occasion back in 1990. The two league games that season against Newcastle before the playoffs were really close draws that season. I think one was 0-0, one was 1-1, or there might have been both 0-0 off the top of my head. But when it comes to the playoffs, is there a psychological aspect that can be kind of gained or lost depending on how you've done against that side in the playoffs?
I don't think so. It's like any game in the championship. And I always go back to, because I've just put myself in that situation. Paul Hardiman missed that penalty at the Roker end and tried to kick John Burridge's head off. You stood there and you're praying that he's going to score, and the amount of pressure that he must have been under. And I'm not blaming Paul because he barely missed a penalty that season, I would say. But you think it's gone. You think, you listen, you read the papers as it was, and we're playing against this team that have finished so many points above us on their home ground in front of this crowd, and you've got no chance. And guess what? We went there and we won. So it doesn't. You've just got to be. You've got to be mentally tough. You're hoping that everyone can deal with the situation. You're hoping that you want to play well. That's the thing. You want to have a good game, and if you clearly get most of your team having a good game, then you've got a great chance.
Sorry, Gary, I couldn't help but laugh. I still saw the pain on your face when you talked about that penalty.
I know, but it's late in the game, and you're thinking, I can't believe it. We're going to win this, and we didn't, but we didn't lose, and it was, brilliant. I think that was probably the best moment in my life, I think, in terms of playing football.
Yeah. And a lot of people in the stand as well. I think they'll probably say the same thing.
Well, the whole, the rain, the steam coming off the fans, and how they got them all in that end. I see pictures, and there must 15,000 in that end. They're only supposed to hold about 6 or 7. Yeah. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's funny you talk to Craig Russell about that, because he was in the away end that day. Funnily enough.
Well, great lad, lovely lad, Craig, and he done really well to get in the team. But I mean, there was 15,000 people in that away end. I think there was about 80 people on the team bus that went straight from St James's Park. I always say, straight from St James's Park, straight to Fino's. Get in.
And then no one remember anything after that.
Yeah, them Hummel tracksuits under those neon lights looked amazing.
Well, let's hope they can do the same in the Hummel tracksuits this season, because we've gone back there. Well, again, looking back at our record at Bristol City, last time out was the first time they beat us at Ashton Gate since a 2-0 defeat in a game you were involved in back in October 1993, which had goals from Wayne Allison and Ian Baird in the last 10 minutes to give them all 3 points. But with the situation this time, the strange way Sunderland are playing out the rest of the season, everything Bristol City have got to play for. I mean, can you see anything else but really a home win in this one?
I never. I sit there with a microphone and people ask you questions. I always say, you don't predict. You sit back and you watch it unfold, and you can say the form this and that and the other, and it just doesn't work out like that. Anything can happen. somebody can get a red card after 5 minutes. You get a penalty. You know, I remember going to Ashton Gate with Sunderland in a very big game when we were in, it would have been the 3rd division, and we were competing for places at the top of the division. We went there, and it was a similar build-up, big crowd in them days, whatever it was, 17 or 18,000. And I scored after 30 seconds. And it was like the Alamo for the next 89. And we hung on, and we hung on, and we defended for our lives, and we won. And that's a scenario that can happen any particular week. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's not a home banker because of the enormity of the game, because of the atmosphere that the game's going to be played in, and clearly for Bristol City, it's the biggest game of the season. It is a real humdinger for City, and for Sunderland to some degree, because you've got to perform. You know, you've got 3,500 people coming down the road, and you put that shirt on, you know that you've got to try your best.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny actually. You mentioned that we were talking about when we talk about reviewing games. I always seem to end up bringing it back to moments in games. You know, sometimes you don't. It's very rare you get actually in the Championship. You get a side just completely outplaying someone for 90 minutes, and it comes down to moments, whether that's a finished chance or a red card or a referee's decision or a deflection or something like that. Yeah. And quite often it comes down to those, minute moments.
Well, it does. I mean, you take Bristol City's last game at home against West Brom. The West Brom keeper had been outstanding. He'd made save after save after save. Bristol City get a chance at last kick of the game, and it's a scuffed shot, and the goalkeeper dives out the way, and it trickles in, and they get 3 points. So anything, we've seen it. We should know better. It's going to be 1-0 or it's going to be a draw. The truth is, we just don't know. We just got to sit back and watch.
Incidentally, that game back in October 1987, you mentioned, Bristol City had Keith Curle and David Moyes at the back, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, no,
which is a bizarre central defence, but yeah. And just out of interest, before the game, do you kind of, do you and Gary Bennett exchange notes, or do you arrange to kind of catch up?
Listen, I love him, Gary. I enjoyed playing with him. I enjoyed socialising with him, and over the years, he's been a very, very good friend, and it's always nice to see him. And his new title as the King of Sunderland, I think he is now, isn't he? Is he?
Always was, wasn't
he? CBE and Freedom of the City, and I can't wait to see him drive his sheep down Fawcett. Not thought of that, but he's just, I think he's someone we should all be proud of. And I'll be seeing Gary. So with a bit of luck, maybe catch up with him before the game or after the game as well. And I'll sort of being appointed an ambassador for the Bristol City Former Players Society. So obviously do a little bit of stuff, meeting supporters in around the corporate lounges before the game, and then up to watch the game.
Yeah. Well, I say it's all shaping up nicely in terms of the stories that could be written. Obviously, you've got Tony Mowbray at West Brom. We talked about Alex Neil at Millwall, and of course, potential meet up between Sunderland and Middlesbrough. We've mentioned that playoff semi-final between Sunderland and Newcastle quite a lot already, which might be something if that ends up the final. But are you hoping for a Sunderland and Bristol City Wembley final?
Of course I am. But based on the situation, and just a chance for both clubs to get into the Premier League, and I think that the toughest thing for me would be watching one of the teams lose. But that's where we're at, and that could well happen.
Yeah. And how big do you think that one would be? Because it'll be the first time two of the big three in the Northeast will have met in a playoff since 1990. But if Sunderland end up taking on Middlesbrough, whether it's the semis or the final,
it's always a big game. The big game up there was always against Newcastle, but I think Middlesbrough fans probably look at that game a little bit differently to Sunderland fans. But in the final, it doesn't matter who it is. It's, it'd just be a shame that everyone's got to travel 250 miles to Wembley, and when they could probably play it up the road somewhere. But listen, everything's sort of could happen at the minute, and that's why it's an exciting time of the season. And clearly, Sunderland are going to be part of the playoffs, whoever they play. So that's the main thing. Yeah. That is the main thing.
And we've touched on it, but I assume you are covering it for BBC Bristol?
I am, yeah. I mean, it is tough. Everyone knows of my association with Sunderland, but I've lived down here 30 years now, and my two sons were born in Bristol, and Josh was at Bristol City from probably being 7 till he was about 21. So, I have clearly got a connection with Bristol City as well, which I'm proud of. But and I'm, as I am with connection with Sunderland, and I always will be. But I can just about watch this game, and I've got to think if they met each other in the final, whether I would actually even go. And I'm not joking.
Really? Wow. Well, that would be a big call.
Well, it just cross your mind, and it's just like that's where I'm at. Anyway, we'll see, and I hope in a strange way that it is, that is the final, because, like I've said, that's the only way either club can get promoted, and for me, I want to see both clubs get that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, plenty of twists and turns until then, but I suppose that's a good place to leave it. And it just leaves me to say thank you very much for joining us, Gary. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always.
No, thank you very much. It's nice of you to ring us. It's still nice to be remembered in my ancient days still, shall we say. It's a long time since I left Sunderland, but it's a period of time that I'll never forget.
Yeah, well, I'll never forget that header against Man United, so that's always one thing at least. But yeah, hope you have a cracking weekend, and if they do meet in the playoffs, maybe meet up again.
Thanks very much.
Good stuff. Thanks again, Gary. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. Keep a lookout at Roker Report for all the build-up ahead of the game against Bristol City, and keep an eye on all the usual places for the next How We're the podcast that should be dropping very soon. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.